Welcome to the Fraser Coast Property Brief, the podcast where property, development and business leaders share what's really happening across the Fraser Coast. Each episode brings you insights into local projects, market trends and the people helping shape the future of our region. Welcome back to the Fraser Coast Property Brief. Today we're looking beyond property alone and into one of the industries that shape our economy, our identity and the demand for accommodation investment across the Fraser Coast. We're talking about tourism. My guest is David Haye from Staywise Advisory. Welcome, David.
G'day, Glenn.
David has spent, about 3 decades in hospitality in this area now?
Yeah, a little bit longer actually, show my age.
All right, well, we won't go right into your age yet, but involvement on tourism boards, which I was on a tourism board with you many years ago, leadership roles in Kingfisher Bay, on Fraser Island, on Gary, now works with owners and investors and operators to improve performance of their hotel tourism operations. So we've got to understand a bit about David's story. I want to test the Fraser Coast tourism, where it's really at. We'll look at the latest visitor numbers, the strengths, what drives our market, some of our record passenger numbers through the airport, the change of name from Fraser Island to Gary, what it actually means. So we're going to go through all that in depth. So first of all, let's talk about you, David. Let's talk about your tourism journey. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you've done over the years here.
Yeah, I guess, originally, Glenn, I was sort of a hospitality kid, grew up in a country pub in Tassie. That's why I live in Queensland. So I was really from a young age involved in hospitality. I had some time in the army, but then I fell back into hotels on the Gold Coast and landed here in Hervey Bay in 1992, which was a bit of a much smaller town in those days. I remember famously, or not famously, but memorably, driving down Main Street and walking into the chemist and said, "Can you tell me where Hervey Bay is?" And I said, "Well, you're here." So some things haven't changed too much in terms of...
We're still looking for the CBD.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But yeah, I was here from 1992 working at Condari Resort. So had a year in England, also working in hotels, and then back, worked for TAFE for a while. Then in the year 2000, started working on Gary, or Fraser Island as it was then, for a little company called the Fraser Island Company. Had a small property at Happy Valley and a small touring business. And then in 2004, I moved across to the Kingfisher Bay Resort Group. And then I took over management of that in 2011. I became the Group General Manager. And I did that until 2023. New owners, Sealink, bought the business in 2018, and that was a great time. I just loved the island. I've still got a real passion for it. It's a great business, a very challenging business, a very large business, very seasonal. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then I moved into a corporate role with Sealink as Executive General Manager, and I was there for 3 years doing that role until April this year, when I left that role, left corporate life, and decided to smell the roses a bit more. And I really was wanted to get back to my roots and get back to working with business owners and operators in their businesses, and hopefully adding some value and solving some problems. And so far so good. It's early stages, but I've got a couple of clients on board and I'm really enjoying it. A bit more work-life balance, but also probably not having that day-to-day pressure of the actual running the business, but I can go in and cherry pick and hopefully find some areas that need improvement. And yeah, it's great. And I'm really determined to remain in this region. That's another thing that's happened over the years. I've had opportunities to move away with my career, but I haven't done it, and I don't want to do it. I love living here. I'm passionate about the region and what it's become and what it can become. So yeah, hopefully I can continue to play a role.
Yep, we're both the same on that. You've been on a lot of tourism boards and advisory around here over the years. Fraser Coast Tourism, it's morphed. It was Fraser Coast Opportunities for a while.
Yes,
so
yeah,
you spent many years on those boards, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. I was originally on the Fraser Coast South Burnett Regional Tourism Board.
Oh, right.
And used to spend some time out in the South Burnett at meetings and things. And look, I think the tourism board, it's a really tough gig. It's much maligned. I think people have unrealistic expectations about what tourism boards can do. Sometimes people within the tourism board have had unrealistic expectations about what they should be doing. From my perspective, it's primarily, its role is to promote the region and grow visitation. It's not an economic development agency. We tried that with Fraser Coast Opportunities, and I think sometimes internally and externally there can be a view that it's there to do things that it's not. It has a fairly small budget when you compare it to other tourism bodies around the state, there is a lot of duplication of tourism bodies. There's 14 RTOs, I think 13 or 14 in regional tourism organisations in one state, which kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think there are opportunities for more amalgamations, but that comes down to local governments and funding. I think the Fraser Coast Regional Council has funded Fraser Coast tourism well, and the events have got a bit mixed up with events, and I think went in a bit of a wrong direction for a while. I think it's back on the right direction. Of the new CEO's a really good guy. Simon's come up from Victoria. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think primarily it's a marketing and promotional organisation. If it could stick to that, and we can keep funding it and get more industry and operators involved, I think it's got a really bright future. But it's an easy dog to kick, if you like, and,
it is.
It doesn't get anyone anywhere. So
everybody's got to look after their own business, and they can't keep blaming tourism board because they don't have numbers through their doors.
Exactly right.
Tell me a little bit about Staywise Advisory, your new business. It's very recent.
Yep.
What does it actually do?
Yeah, so I guess I've sort of tried to focus on I can provide services to businesses that want to implement change. So they're not happy with the way things are performing in a particular area, and that's the two clients I've got at the moment in particular that I'm doing work with in those areas. So it's really identifying areas that aren't, or they know what's not working, but they don't know why, or they need solutions. So going in and having a really good look under the bonnet, if you like. So that's part of it. Change implementation, so they might be acquiring something or changing direction or implementing a new direction for it as well as owners' representation. So if people own assets that don't personally operate them themselves and have management involved, and they want someone to give them advice and guidance, whether it's a one-off or an ongoing relationship. So that's the type of thing that I do as well, and also interim management. So if they've got perhaps a gap in their management of their business and they need someone to come in and sit in the chair for a little bit and perhaps to make some changes at the same time. So trying to really work in that accommodation, food and beverage. Obviously island resorts I've got a bit of experience in, but also with my Sea-Link background with transport and logistics as well. So I can help them there as well.
So you're sticking to tourism businesses only?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that. I think that's where my expertise lies, and I could look beyond that, but I think there's probably the most opportunity for me to help within tourism and hospitality. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's jump into tourism. The question is Fraser Coast tourism actually improving? There's a lot of numbers out there. Some of the numbers are picking up. We have about 845,000 domestic overnight visitors. About 2.6 million visitor nights. Average domestic stays about 3.1 nights. Overnight visitor spends about $567. Day trip spends $151. So total spend from a visitor is $719. Then we have international, about 77,000 international tourists, 447 international nights. They stay longer, 5.8. You've been in it for a long time. Are those numbers fairly true, or what's going on the ground? And has it been improving over the years?
Yeah, it's a really good question, or they're good questions. I think, are the numbers correct? I suspect not. I don't think 77,000 international visitors is accurate. I think, and it is very hard to measure these things now, particularly the way people travel. Some people hop in a hippie camper or whatever. There's those vans that they drive around. How do you measure them? How do you capture them? So the statistics are quite fluid. But has it improved? I mean, there's one thing in there. If you look at domestic visitation first, 3.1 nights. Now, if we could grow that to 4 nights, for example, that would have a massive impact. Yeah. So, and obviously 3.1 is a figure that's arrived at because a lot of people come for a 2-night stay on a weekend or whale watching or whatever it is. But our domestic market is pretty much half of the domestic visitation comes from southeast Queensland, Brisbane, if you like, Brisbane, Gold Coast. The other half comes from, with the intrastate, comes from regional Queensland, and then we've got a pretty good interstate market, which is growing with flights that I'll talk about in a minute. But I think if you think about, okay, if our goal was to grow from 3.1 to 4 for domestic visitors, that's great. How do we do it? Now that is the real problem. It's product. So access we're fixing in terms of airline flights. Direct flights from Melbourne and Sydney are great. Brisbane's still a bit fraught, but it's got a bit better in the last 12 months, but when they don't cancel. But anyway, I think competition on that route would be great.
What about the road going around Gympie now, picking up 20 minutes? You're getting 3 million people in southeast Queensland.
Yep.
We're supposed to go around Tyro next, which is delayed again.
Yep.
is that having a big impact? Because we do fundamentally have a dry market, don't we?
Yeah. I think sadly, that has had an impact, but then fuel prices has had a negative impact as well recently. So it shows you how vulnerable we are. But what I'm getting at is that if we had more things to do here, more draw cards, we're relying on Gari, we're relying on nice beaches and fishing and walking on the Esplanade and whale watching. I'm watching a very short season, and I think we have to diversify the product and the offering so that people are pretty sophisticated travellers these days. And our competition, have a look at the stats. I had a look yesterday at the stats for the Sunshine Coast. Now the Sunshine Coast is getting like 4 million visitors a year, or 3.5 actually, I think it is. So how do we tack into that? How do we? And you're right, the drive is less now. If you talk about driving from Noosa now, it's closer. It's so how do we get people that maybe fly into the Sunshine Coast Airport and have some time at Mooloolaba or somewhere, and then come and stay 3 or 4 nights on the Fraser Coast? But we've got to give them a compelling reason to do it. We've got to have without a cheap shop, but you've got to be able to have dinner later than 8:30. You have to have a diverse range of products. Now we don't have all weather products in Hervey Bay, or weather tourism attractions in Hervey Bay. We need them, and that comes back to, I'm not into council bashing or at all, but I think what we need to do is we need to have a clear picture and some vision about what the region could be and how do we build. I'm probably answering another question now, but how do we grow that? So. Back to visitation nights, length of stay and the number of nights domestically, that should be a goal. Internationally, I think the figures are flawed, but again, why are international visitors here and when are they here? And the other thing that we're seeing is a lot of seasonality, and that's really hard on businesses. So your staffing, your fixed costs. So we've got to fill those troughs, and we've got to do that by diversifying the tourism product. But I think as our share of the market in Queensland is pretty static. So as Queensland's grown as a tourism destination, so have we organically. And the other big thing here is visiting friends and relatives. As the place has grown, the population's increased from in the 20-odd thousand to 75,000 in the time that I've lived here. Then naturally you get a lot more of that. But what do people do? How do we get money out of their pockets if they're staying in private homes, which these figures don't really capture? How do we then get them into that visitor economy and spending? And that's the challenge.
Yep. So, our fly market's increased a lot, and I think it's at best it's been. We're about 240,000 passenger movements in 2025. Airport's getting it's getting another upgrade very shortly. I've noticed that over the years. I was involved in those upgrades, and I built part of the terminal many years ago. But I'm seeing it more because our migration is about 2,500 a year. And we were getting a lot of New South Wales migration over the years, and we've had Victorian migration pre to that. So a lot of that domestic flights and direct flights and big family visiting.
Definitely.
But what I'm seeing in the numbers in the construction side and the sales and that at the moment is we're getting a real change in the demographic. They're now coming from Upper Gold Coast, Moreton Bay Shire, and one of the biggest increased markets recently is Sunshine Coast. So that's going to change our potential domestic tourism, isn't it?
Definitely.
And like you're saying, how do we capture them out of the Gold Coast? So it's not a matter of them not being able to get here anymore. It's a matter of what do they do when they get here? Spot on. What's missing? What's missing on land-based tourism?
And if you consider, the Sunshine Coast, great place. Got very busy, very frustrating to drive around these days, but also Mooloolaba, Maroochydore, etc. There's been a lot of development, so we offer a more pristine environment. But again, how do we tack onto it? So from a marketing point of view, I think we should be tacking onto that Sunshine Coast brand, and we should be collaborating with them more, not seeing them as competition, particularly if you're coming from Melbourne or Milan. If you're coming from overseas, it's a bit like, 2 states in America or 2 counties in England, fighting for market share. That's not how they should work. It should be a journey. We've had some over the years, some driving trails and those sorts of things, and I think that's the kind of stuff that's key. I also think the Maryborough Heritage Precinct has got amazing potential. If you look at what's been done in Victoria, some of those Sovereign Hill and those sort of places, I think it's the jewel in the crown, and it's already there. So it wouldn't take a lot to really put some funding into that and develop more product around it. And again, that gets people moving throughout the region as well, which everyone benefits from.
So I've talked about a lot in the podcast and over the years. We've got an ageing population. We do get the baby boomer market with caravans, all that. We really need that young market, that 25 to 30-year-old young family market. But, and I talk to my staff and things like that, there's not that much for them to do when I get here. If there's a bad day of weather, because we're all about water-based tourism, whale watching or boating or going to Fraser, if it's a bad day, there is no big land-based tourism. There is no Australia Zoo. There is no movie world type thing. What's the one magic thing that we can actually plop in here that would actually start filling in those bad tourism days?
Look, I think it mightn't exactly meet that market, but one of the big gaps we've got is we don't have we've got a World Heritage Site. It's one of the most iconic places in the world. It's something I'm obviously biased. I worked there for a long time, but Gowrie is absolutely a fantastic spot. The only interpretive centre for the World Heritage Site is at Kingfisher Bay, and it was built with Kingfisher Bay's money privately. There's no proper World Heritage Visitor Centre. To me, I think we should be activating the boat harbour. I know everyone says that. Rob Borbich was the Premier, and I think about 1994, and came and gave us a bucket of money and said, off you go. And anyway, that didn't happen.
I remember meeting Rob back then.
So it's every time I run into him, I mention it, and he laughs about it. But it's true, it's sad. But we've got opportunities, and we've got that building, that Great Sandy Straits Marina building that sits there doing nothing. It's quite a big building already. We could have a whale watching experience in terms of an interactive theatre, those types of things, so we get 12 months out of it. Like, should it be a brewery? I don't know. I mean, go to places in WA, Bunbury, for example, and they're just so alive. But they haven't sold the farm, and I don't think we need to do that. I think we should be having. I mean, Enzo's is iconic. We should have dining on the beach. You should better do it like Jimbaran Bay in Bali. Those sorts of things. We've got a north-facing beach with no surf, which could be seen as a disadvantage. Turn it into an advantage. You could do something here and have a unique experience. Food and wine and produce. We're not really known for it. We could be. Everyone knows what a Hervey Bay scallop is, but try and buy one in Hervey Bay fresh. For example, I'm not just being negative and critical here, but I see opportunities in that market.
We don't grasp
them. And look, what we really need, to be honest, and I know it's controversial about the height of it, which isn't something I really have a view on, but a 5-star hotel in Hervey Bay, it will take a while to make money and make sense. Somebody will have to really have a big set of what's to do it. But I think what it will do, it will bring other businesses around it, because it will bring a different type of visitor. At the moment, there's no hotels in Hervey Bay that offer a bed and breakfast. You can't stay in a hotel and go downstairs and have a buffet breakfast in the hotel you're staying at. It doesn't exist. Or a hot buffet, I should say. So it's those sorts of things. It's what discerning travellers want. You want to get your car parked or whatever. You want a really nice room. You want room service, all those sorts of things. Now, you could have said the same thing about the Sunshine Coast 20 or 30 years ago. So it build it and they'll come mentality. It will change things, and it'll take a while to work. But again, this isn't. This is quite difficult, I think, and I've talked to council over the years about this. You've got a planning scheme, and whether, again, I'm not getting into the height thing, I'm just talking about zones and areas. If you were to create, my view is Biddeford Street is an example, and Queen Street's another, where one-way traffic on the Esplanade there, make it a mall, do something. Broadbeach on the Gold Coast is a really good example. I lived there in the early 90s, and it wasn't a very nice part of the Gold Coast at all. Now it's fantastic. So yes, we're developer-led, no offence, but we have to have vision as a community and say, let's create some zones and some areas where people want to relax and enjoy themselves and dine and other things to do, whether it's market spaces or whatever it is. But I think if you create those sorts of things and combine that with different levels of accommodation and some all-weather attractions, it's not council or government's job to do that, but it is their job to have the vision of saying, what could we do in this area, and then go and find people that would be happy to invest in it. So again, I'm not being critical of anyone. If you ask me what I see as the opportunities, they're the opportunities. We still have a sort of a botched together town, which is, the CBD in Piaba development is fantastic. I think all those things are really good, but we should have a 30-year plan for what we want this place to look like, or we run the risk of it not looking very good at all and not working, not connecting.
No, we've been going through this for many years. Bureaucracy gets in the way, and political ambition is, 3-year cycles, things like that. Like the marina, I've been, in arguments with the marina, as you have, for over 20 years. It's 5 separate state government leases over that land. We were talking about an interpretive centre down there 20 odd years ago.
That's right.
We had Kevin Seymour was going to increase it by a third and do resorts down there. Every time you have something bold, the bureaucracy got in the way. Even what you're talking about now with, the council chambers, that's one of the boldest moves they've made. But it took over 20 years because every council just thought they would get thrown out,
Yep.
the councillors, if they made that decision.
Yeah.
So it kept going on and on and on, and no one had the courage to do it. This council has had the courage, or the previous council had the courage, which is good. You know, we've talked about closing off the Esplanade, making it one way near the salt, you know, down there at Urangan, but then councils vote against it.
Yep.
We've talked about making a mall on top end of Main Street. We keep talking about this year in, year out, but we just don't have the boldness in our leadership as a city
absolutely.
to make the big hard ones, even though it might be negative for a few years. The long-term effect will be massive. If you look at Mooloolaba, when they turned that Esplanade and made it
Absolutely.
one way,
Great
user-friendly, stuck the car parks in the rear street.
Yep.
Absolute change that, and you had all those resorts get built all the way along there.
And interestingly, there they left the caravan park.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, whether they should, don't know, but they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can, and I guess, you know, again, there'll be vested interest in them. But there's 2 sailing clubs on the Esplanade, which are really underutilised. So there's examples. Maybe could that be one and make it a better one?
Yeah.
But then the other one gets developed into something, but which the community can own. You don't have to sell these things off necessarily. But there's all sorts of opportunities. But you have to think about, let's give some distinctiveness, because again, Airlie Beach did it, and I know it's controversial to talk about in this town apparently, but they built a lagoon, and they got they had stingers and those sort of things to contend with as well. But we've got tides to contend with. But that whole precinct is so different now. I've been going to Airlie Beach for a long time. You got the restaurants that open on the street, but they also now open out to the lagoon, and it's a safe place. It's a nice place. They've just created atmosphere. I'm not necessarily saying we need a lagoon, but I'm saying there's some vision and there's a plan, and you've turned a pretty crappy part of town into something really nice that visitors appreciate, and they do. You see them there. So it's I think that's where we as a community need to come together. And again, I agree. The political realities are very real. And we don't need to turn this into a place just for tourists. We should turn it into a really nice place. Darwin's
But the locals use it.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The young family, like I'll call it, we need a lagoon. You know, I've been calling for years. You know, like I go to Yeppoon at the moment. We're doing work up in Yeppoon, and they just built the lagoon on the water. But I'm seeing the young families. It's not just the tourists. It's the people that live there. Have got a space to go in. Airlie Beach is the same. It's just
I go to Airlie Beach and 6 o'clock in the morning. There's people swimming laps in there, and they're locals. So
that's the same as Yeppoon now.
Yes,
so.
And I think that's, if we can end up with better public spaces for the community, tourists will like them as well. So
they will.
And we need to maximise this frontage we've got. We've got the beautiful frontage.
Yeah.
I mean, the bike path is really, really difficult. In places it's too narrow, it's windy, it's it's dangerous. There's a whole lot of opportunity there as well.
They were talking about turning that to a 4 metre wide bike path about a year or so ago, so I don't know where that's at.
Ken was talking about that before he left, and,
he was.
And I thought the council actually agreed to do it. So but it's that kind of stuff. And again, Bustleton's another place that has done it really, really well in WA. They've got a really long pier. They've got it's kind of a heritage town, but at the land side of the pier, there's a really nice looking brewery right opposite the old railway station, and it's done fantastic. It is a tourist attraction and a space for locals, etc. So it's the vision and the
and they had the observatory at the end of the pier too. Bus, I went over to it.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. So there's examples of where there's still nice small towns and good places to live, but they've really embraced the visitor economy.
So let's get a little bit into the property side of it. What accommodation are we missing? You know, like you've been in tourism for 20 odd years, you know what accommodation you've had on the island.
Yep.
But they also want a couple of nights here before they go to the island and vice versa.
Yep.
What are we really missing here in Hervey Bay?
A full service integrated hotel at 4 or 5 star level.
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. So brand, so it's either the Sheridan or I think they're talking about the Radisson now at the old Payoba hotel site.
Yeah.
What about other types of, have we got enough motels? Have we got enough apartments, or should we be doing different bed and breakfasts, or is there another mix in the market we're missing?
I think there's certainly enough apartments, self-contained apartments, and enough motel rooms. Again, it's the hotel style accommodation that's hard. There's not much of that.
Yep.
When I first worked at Condari in the early 90s, the whale season, we used to book out. People used to stay in Childers because in September school holidays, that we didn't have enough accommodation. 10 years later, we had too much. It's a really difficult thing. I understand that. And again, that comes back to earlier in the conversation, is the seasonality of this town makes it very, very hard for investors and operators to make money, but it's sort of build it and they'll come. Look, I mean, selfishly, I play golf. Our golf course is full of locals. There's a waiting list of a few years to get on there. But again, and I'm not a property expert, but what I see in this town is endless developments of really small lots with the houses all look the same. The opportunity for something maybe a little bit out of town, but again, it would be an attraction of a fully integrated Twin Waters type development.
Yep.
With a golf course and a planned community. It would bring people the climate. We've got the perfect climate. We've got access is being fixed. Where the road, as you mentioned,
Yep.
you can drive from Brisbane to here in 3 hours flat, etc. So that's going to get shorter and shorter. So I would think that becomes a tourist attraction as well as a locals place. But I think overall we're good. We've got plenty of caravan parks. Maybe too many in some ways, but anyway, I won't get into that. But I think it's that higher end accommodation. And the thing you find, Glenn, is places like Hamilton Island, they're recession proof. Qualia at Hamilton Island, their occupancy is 95%, and that's only because they take the rooms out and refurbish them every year. They could be 100, and they just run an average room rate of a couple of grand a night. So people with money have money. They do. They don't suffer from the recessions like we do. I think there's a place on Gari for a 5-star property, a really high-end boutique property, and again a lodge type experience.
You just got to get the access there and make it easy. They want to fly in, they want to do something. They don't have time.
And some people won't stay in Hervey Bay. And I've seen people over the years that would stay at Kingfisher. It's just met their needs, but there's some nice houses and things there. But they wouldn't stay in Hervey Bay because there's nothing actually at the right standard. There's a couple of places that might be, but they usually wouldn't do a one-night stay.
Yep. So talk about Fraser Island and Gari. How much did that name change cost in tourism dollars, really? Because, we had a worldwide name, Fraser Island. You spent, people like Kingfisher and everybody else spent decades building a brand, and we even changed our area to the Fraser Coast based on that. And it's a switch overnight.
You couldn't measure it. You could keep adding zeros. The philosophical decision to change the name, I don't object to. It's like Ayers Rock and Uluru. I've got no problem with it at all. Interestingly, the traditional owners own Ayers Rock Resort, and they still call it Ayers Rock Resort because it's got a brand. Now, the rock is called Uluru. So what we did lobby the government at the time, and I was on the tourism board at the time for a plan. We got some funding to develop a strategy to roll out the name change over a length of time, and anyway, it didn't get supported and it didn't get funded. So it was a decision that was made for rightly or wrongly, but like any brand change, you need to consider that really carefully. So it damaged this region, not just the businesses on the island, but the region. You could not measure the damage that it did.
It'd be tens of millions, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And still doing. I always used to say to people, you could walk down the main street of Dusseldorf and ask people if they'd heard of Brisbane or they'd heard of Fraser Island, and I guarantee they'd heard of Fraser Island. In that, like the German market, for example, huge brand. So Kingfisher Bay, very well known. Fraser Island, very well known. So and they were sort of synonymous with it. So you to change a name like that it was a really poor move the way it was executed. And even the government at the time, the government that they didn't even support it being called Gari Fraser Island. They just said no, it's Gari. It's no Fraser Island reference. But on the flip side, it's happened. It's there. The opportunity that exists now is to develop that heritage and cultural tourism, and I think that is absolutely a massive opportunity for us as a region. I didn't bring it up earlier in terms of new product because it's a diversification or an addition to an existing product, but you'll get a different type of visitor or longer length of stay or pay more money for an authentic traditional owner-led experience. And I think there's some work being done by various organisations on that. I'd encourage them to keep going because it's something that we really, it's a massive market worldwide. And you mentioned the young demographic. So my kids are in their 20s and they're very aware, very culturally aware and environmentally aware, and want to make sure that that their visitation to places is done in a sustainable way and a respectful way.
And we travel a lot overseas, and I go to a lot of places full of history.
Exactly.
From Petra to Rome to the pyramids, and like the pyramids, that massive museum they've just done there. It's a major attraction.
Absolutely.
People want to understand history.
And I come back to that opportunity for a World Heritage Interpretive Centre, which would certainly have a traditional owner presence and theme to it. That's a huge opportunity that we're missing at the moment. So you could tick a whole lot of boxes by doing that here, but also the development of product on the island.
I've still got the plans for one from about 20 years ago. They're going to put a caravan park at the marina.
Yes.
when Ted was in. So still waiting.
Well, and that's another bit of land that's just sort of going around in circles.
It is
a bit about that. So.
Yeah, it is because they haven't changed at least the freehold. It's just another crazy thing.
Yeah.
We might wrap it up in a second, but tourism board's priorities. I see councils got marketing out now for a new advisory board over certain things. You got a new tourism board led. What should we be focusing on over the next decade in our tourism product here?
Yeah, I think all weather and higher end, and so I think the tourism board's role is to promote whatever's here. But I think from an economic development point of view, we should be focusing on how do we attract a different type of visitor, so we've got a more diverse visitor range, and that comes back to what I was mentioning about the standard of accommodation, but also things to do, and how do we encourage that, not just council or local or state government, but as a community, how do we, I guess, incubate that and encourage it, whether it's walking tours, whatever it is. It's things that they don't have to be big and expensive. Obviously, some bold things like you and I agree on things like a lagoon would be great, but beyond that, or before that, just using what we've got and really marketing it well. But we've got to get people that are willing to jump off the cliff and start a business and start an operation in this town or in this region, and it'll be sustainable. I was talking to, just as an aside, I was talking to Phil from the boat club the other day. We're on the way of the island for the long lunch, and we're talking about going up the Mary River, and that is a fantastic experience.
Yep.
So, but again, there's some logistics in that, and it's hard to get the momentum going. But we've got a whole, and I know you mentioned about marine. It's narrow and weather dependent in some ways, but one of the unique opportunities we have here is we have this fleet of whale watching boats all year that only whale watch 3 or 4 months a year. So utilise them, diversify the product, and you can't tell people how to run their businesses, but what we can do is make sure there's no government red tape in the way, and we can get out of the way. And I think Chris Foley government's doing a lot of that. But is if there's ideas out there, make sure we just fast track it and let's see what happens.
But even with that, like, it is red tape because, again, the whale watching boats, and I've hired Phil's boat for private functions and things like that, and the boat's not allowed to pull up on Gari.
Yeah, that's right.
It can park and people can swim in, but it can't even pull up. It's ridiculous. But 400,000 tourists can go drive on there and park there, but a single tourism boat can't even put 30 people on the beach.
There's probably a whole nother podcast about the management of that.
It's the insanity of it,
and how it's not managed, and how it could be managed. That wouldn't have long enough. But I think that is something that absolutely needs to be. I know it's not a new product, but the way the island is managed it's a major tourism destination. It's run as a national park, and it's ridiculous. So that if you look around the world, there's ways that's done really well, and it's certainly not done really well here. And again, a massive opportunity for us without wrecking it and without exploiting anything. But just to make it better and make it work. And what you've just highlighted there is a classic example of an asset that's sitting there that we just can't use.
Back on land, we still lack food. Good food outlets, good 5-star restaurants, different experiences like your breweries, things like that. And it's very hard for a small business because we've got a lot of ageing population. They don't spend the money. We've got a lower income base and things like that. How do we transform this into a more of a 5-star dining experience, land-based in Hervey Bay?
Yeah, supply and demand. If you've got somewhere that's nice to stay, people with that money and demanding of those other things that come. That's what I was getting at. Like a 5-star hotel won't just be limited to that. It'll be the outward spend on tours, on attractions, on food, dining, etc. So at the moment, supply and demand. I understand if I'm running a restaurant and I've got 5 staff working and everyone's gone by 9 o'clock, I'm going to knock them off and close the doors. I'm not going to stay up until 10:30 for one table. I get that. I'm usually at the table, but I understand how that works. But there needs to be more people that want to stay. And that is very hard. It's chicken and egg. I see it, but it's difficult. But I think whatever we can do as a community to encourage the development of, and again, I'm not getting into heights and all that. That's not my space.
That.
I'm talking about the standard of accommodation. We need that to happen because that will be a catalyst for a whole lot more change. And then you could also argue that those people won't necessarily get on a Jetstar flight. They will if they need to. That they will do it. But air access, I'm absolutely so happy with the council for that move. I think it's great. It's what made places like Hamilton Island and Ayers Rock, they only work because they have Ayers Rock Resort, I should say, Uluru, but only work because they have air access. And the more air access we have, and the more open and friendly we are to airlines. I mean, it'd be great to get Virgin back in. Hopefully the timing will be right for that in the near future. Again, that's not my space, but I think we need absolutely the more access. I mean, maybe it's controversial, but are we going to bypass Maryborough after Tyro? I mean, why do I have to drive through the middle of Maryborough to get to Hervey Bay? I'm not negative about Maryborough. I love Maryborough,
No.
but it's
well, we've been working on that too as an industry, and it's not about Maryborough. It's about efficiency getting the people to the destination. So there is talks about a loop road going around there. We've been trying to encourage it. We've actually drawn up a few loop roads. But the other thing is, just on a practical sense for Maryborough, all your trucks have to go through the middle of Maryborough on a council road. So council's paying for the repairs, where you've really got state-controlled trucks coming up and wanting to deliver. But they've got to go through. So council gets negative out of that wear and tear because of the state government haven't provided the roads.
It's interesting. I've heard some feedback from the Mayor of Gympie via a third party, but the question was, what's happened to Gympie since they bypassed it? Has it died? Is it really bad? And the answer was no. The community are really enjoying it. There's not all these trucks going through the middle of town. They feel like they've got the town back, and they're still visitors, but they're really enjoying it, and it's actually changed Gympie positively. So I'm sure McDonald's and a few others aren't as happy about it as he is, but there's certainly been some positive sides. And again, I think Maryborough absolutely got so much potential for us from a tourism perspective, and I'd love to see us do more with that as a community. We don't need a convention centre in Hervey Bay. We've got one in Maryborough. It's a 30-minute bus ride. It's fine. Fix that road up. That'd be good. But there's so many things we could do with Maryborough. But again, a loop road would be a great thing, because if you chop another 10 minutes off, and then Tyro's 10 minutes, suddenly you're talking 2 hours 30, 2 hours 40 from Brisbane.
That's a weekend.
That's absolutely, it's a weekend. And the Sunshine Coast is chock-a-block. It's busy. It's hard to drive around. Try getting into Noosa and getting a car park. It's not us. So that's a whole other market. And I mean, eventually too, if demand's there, you should be able to get on a plane on Friday afternoon out of Brisbane and go home on Sunday afternoon and have a weekend up here as an alternative as well. So there's all those things that we as locals and residents would benefit from more air access. But the tourists will make it pay, high yielding business.
Yep. All right. We might wrap it up there. Thank you for your insights,
Thanks
David.
very much.
It's great to
Enjoyed
listen.
the chat.
30 years plus in the industry. A lot of ideas. We're going to have another podcast about the red tape.
Yes,
it's
anytime.
different.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you very much. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook or YouTube or one of your favourite podcasts. Thanks.
Thanks, Len.